We're live. Hello there, everybody. This is Dr. Paul. I am trying out my very first solo live stream, which will be recorded. Wow, Geraldine's already here, and it's for a good purpose. I think many years ago I ran a weekly uh, teleseminar program only by phone, and we had a lot of members, and it ran 10 full years. And I haven't found a similar way since to do Q&A, like live in person and personal. This is kind of the best that I've found though so far because you guys can tune in and listen and comment. So I do have a question. A gentleman in London, a musician, asked me to help him out with feeling kind of sad about a relationship, at least what he perceived as a relationship, kind of withering away, ghosting away kind of a thing. So I'm going to read this to you, and he won't be identifiable, which is good, but it's kind of a rich story. So I'm going to go ahead and read this to you. Then we'll get into it. And you can feel free to comment as we go along. All right. For some reason in my life, musicians like me, I don't, I don't know exactly why. I have so many friends that are musicians, and I myself played trumpet in high school, and that's about it. Mess around with guitar and karaoke. But here's another one who's a musician. So, as a musician in London, I meet a lot of tourists as they pass through the old capital. 2 years ago, I met a cute European girl and we exchanged Instagrams. We spoke the following day online, but she returned to her country on an early flight. The next 2 years were spent messaging each other frequently, building a strong emotional connection, laughing about differences in our cultures, and fantasizing about a life together. We daydreamed we would get married and that I would drink English tea with cow's milk on our wedding day. Cow's milk in tea was considered disgusting in her country. We dreamed of honeymooning on a beach and had as passionate intimacy one could have over the phone. Late last year, I had another gig and she decided that she would like to come and stay with me at my place. She flew in on the Friday and I met her at the airport. I must say she was breathtakingly beautiful, and I couldn't quite believe my luck. I played it cool, and that first night we had the most romantic night together. I showed her the sights of London Bridge, Big Ben, and then we kissed under the statue of Cupid's arrow in Piccadilly Circus, which is kind of a thing. I know I'm going to comment on that in a moment. No one would believe me that Cupid actually appeared that night and pierced my heart with his arrow. After a romantic night spent together in perfect cohabitation, the next day we went to my gig. It was a small venue, but sold out, and I had a friend run the door for tickets for me. This meant I was having to do admin with him most of the night, but I encouraged her to freely mingle with a host of my most cherished London friends. I didn't give it a second thought and was busy being the welcoming host. My nightmare began. As soon as I took to the stage, I hadn't realized one of my friends had been hitting on her all night behind my back. As I took to the stage, I saw what had been happening. They were flirting outrageously, and she made it very clear to me this was happening, either to test me or to let me know she was desirable. But I stood on stage about to perform, and I couldn't mate guard or tell her to act like a lady at my gig, please. My heart broke. When the gig finished, we took the tube south of the river to my place in silence. All chemistry between us was gone, and I had a sick feeling in my stomach. She returned to her country, and after a couple weeks, we had an argument about something trivial, and she deleted me from her social media and her life. I didn't know who to blame. Did she play me? Was she just testing me? My so-called friend turned up to my next gig and hit on everything in a skirt as if nothing happened. Thank you, Dr. Paul. That was cathartic. I've had Jealous Guy by John Lennon on repeat all morning, so my unconscious has answered. Okay, wow. That there is worth not a romantic comedy, but a romantic tragedy film, I almost think. This may be short as a talk, or it may be long. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm also going to watch for your comments. Let's do this. Okay. So, two things I immediately notice about this story. He wants to know, well, he's sad, he's grieving. He started to have an attachment, a pretty strong attachment, which is something originally talked about by Konrad Lorenz, the ethologist who studied ducklings on his family's farm in Austria. And and he conceived of the notion of imprinting for the first time. He called it imprinting. And his famous quote is, "Imprinting is forever," which is profound. And it directly, I am convinced, does connect to human courtship, because the definition of imprinting was for a behavior, a universal behavior, aka an instinct, to turn on only under the right conditions and at the right time. In the case of the ducklings, the time of their development, they were old enough to be looking for their mother, and they thought Conrad Lorenz walking along was their mother, and they started following him. Isn't that also true of human courtship? Let's just call it dating, early courtship. So if you don't say and do the right things naturally, instinctually, in the right way at the right time, then something feels, quote, off about the courtship. And it may end at that point on the part of one or the other person. Guess what? Conrad Lorenz went on to study his entire life after the imprinting discovery, human courtship. Isn't that interesting? Because they certainly relate. Okay, so back to this London gentleman, musician. He wants to know, was it my fault? Was it her fault? Was I played? That means it was mainly her fault. Or did I do things wrong? In this imprinting sense. And by the way, I view attachment, bonding, projection of the same sex parents' nature all as imprinting phenomena. And I think there is a fourth. I won't get into that now. It's throughout all my works. But I believe the fourth comes from anthropology, and it is initiation into adult life and your adult peer group. But more on that some other time. Okay, so this gentleman felt an attachment, the start of one, maybe a bond where he wanted to be giving and caring, and loving, not just attracted, but loving. It sounds like they slept together at least once. But the first thing that struck me is that something I always say is that, we humans were flesh and blood. We did not evolve to truly feel love, attachment, or attraction through electronic means, through social media. We're not evolved for that. We're evolved for in-person contact, usually in small groups, small tribes like 12, the size of a hunting tribe, a hunter-gatherer group of 12, not a giant crowd, and not purely by social media. So when people talk to me about long distance relationships, which most certainly this gentleman perceived it. And the reason he's grieving, I think, is the investment, certainly of time, of at least 2 years. I haven't talked to him about this. He's written me back and forth. It probably feels like a 2-year relationship to him, or he thinks it's a 2-year relationship. But no, because of how we're evolved, I tend to tell people the length of their long distance relationship is the days and hours amount that they have spent physically together. So this gentleman had physical intimacy for at least a day, maybe 2 total with this person. So guess what the length of the relationship is? 1 to 2 days, not 2 years. Try to wrap your mind around that. I'm just being truthful. And you see I'm tying it to just logic and science. So how would a potential date you're pursuing behave if you had only known them 1 to 2 days? Yes, I know you've talked about your cultures, you've talked about all these various things, but maybe put all that communication into a bucket of what would transpire in your talking on a dinner date. Yes, a 2-year amount of exchange of information, but it's kind of like your first date over that 2-year span, because it wasn't in person. Now, I don't want to be overly clinging to this idea, but it's really something for you to think about. Maybe it would ease your mind a little bit, or at least give you understanding of the behavior that transpired, what went down. Because if you're on a first date and then all of a sudden you had to really, when she came to your concert, that was your first date. Really, it was your physical first date, because you didn't really have that much personal interaction when you first met 2 years prior. So you're on a date, you have had a lengthy conversation, but then all of a sudden, unfortunately, but it's your duty, you were obliged to run your concert and do administrative things. It'd be like sitting down on it. And I'm not saying this is your fault, like you did something wrong here. It's just, it is what it is. It could explain her behavior. You sit down to dinner, you had a great conversation, lengthy conversation, and you even had physical intimacy prior to this, but then all of a sudden you're obliged to do all these duties. You have to do administrative things, but you encourage her to be in this fun environment that's very crowded, packed with interesting, new, exciting people. It's a different culture for her. It's extra exciting. And then add to it I don't want to say online, they call it it's actually a scientific term in evolutionary psychology. Males, like male chimpanzees, there'll always be some sneaky, begins with F, ers. And the scientists actually use that term, for the chimpanzees who mate poach. So there's a mate poaching type guy there pretending to be your friend. He's not really your friend. And he took action while she was not being hovered over by you or protected by you or given attention by you. That's the first step, the most important step in early dating, sexual attraction within human courtship is giving attention to the female. The female instinct that desires this and also transmits beauty is what I call the Aphrodite instinct. Author Rob Henderson recently forwarded a story about this from a friend of his, another author. So the Aphrodite instinct, and it desires attention. And again, it's not your fault. You're doing what you had to do as a duty. It was a duty and you had to do it. Therefore, it is not your fault what went down. But she had your attention, you had physical intimacy, then you had to go do things. And then a sneaky F shows up. And of course, just like in a chimpanzee world, might try to seduce the female, or at least give her attention, which she may not respond to physically. She may have no further relationship with this person, but she got the attention that instinct demands as the very first step of human courtship. And he gave it. He gave the attention. He knew what to do. So I think that's part of what went down. Okay. So this long distance thing, your relationship length is 2 days, not 2 years. You got into an unfortunate situation where you had to live up to your duties, be professional, and you did. So you did the right thing, not the wrong thing. This person, so early in the courtship with you being only 2 days long, will rightfully have her own story of the night and process. She has every right to keep noticing suitors that come her way. She's only known you 2 days, technically, physically, in person. So, she fell prey to that. Okay, so enough about what did you do or not understand about what led to this. Let's talk about her. I don't know her. You haven't described her thoroughly enough and I don't want you to either. This is it for our Q&A for just you and just you. I'm not going to go back and forth online with novel length details on this. But what I wonder about her and what I would advise every male and female in their dating when they just start meeting people is to have an incredibly keen sense of all the check boxes and markers or red flags of narcissism more than what you have. The reason I say it that way is according to Heinz Kohut and Otto Kernberg, the self-psychology grandfathers who studied narcissism perhaps most extensively of anybody, they said we all are narcissistic. We all have at least some over self-concern, some areas of immaturity is really what it amounts to. Selfishness, manipulativeness. In other words, what George Vaillant and Freud himself might describe as more primitive, dropping into more primitive ego defenses, which are social instincts built into all of us universally, and which will lead to, if they're primitive, they're far more narcissistic and they're more self-preserving and self-concerned and ignorant of the needs of others. As the ego defenses march toward mature ego defenses, they become more thoughtful, generous, pro-social, mature, and conscious. Okay. So you got to watch for the primitive behaviors, primitive ego defenses as you're starting to meet people. You have to screen for those who will likely be more narcissistic than you and therefore will tend to play you, as you say, take you for a ride, use you. And then you have to, so who knows about this woman? That sounds discourteous to me that you invite her, you as the band leader, I assume, the main musician, the performer, to your concert. The intention and the expectation, of course, is this is a special experience you are giving her, and she owes you gratitude for that. And it's ingrateful to allow a sneaky, other man to come along, even though he gives her attention and just be all his for the evening as far as interaction. That strikes me as more on the narcissistic side. You can't know for sure because we don't know every detail about her. And also, you must keep in mind it's a 2 day long relationship. So she has every right to socialize and to be approached because you aren't boyfriend, girlfriend yet, nowhere near it, even though you think maybe you were with the 2 year social media communication. You weren't boyfriend, girlfriend. Plus, she's abroad. She's coming, and no pun intended. I didn't intend that. She comes from another country, maybe France, I'm guessing, or who knows, Ukraine. But it's exciting for her to be in a new land. She got an invite from a musician. That's like a star invited you. You were intimate together. That might be the icing on the cake of her exotic mini vacation that you invited her to. But it sounds like she's a more narcissistic person than you. And luckily for you, she did what she did. And also the fact she would cut you off. What does that say? If it was a 2 year communication and you're cut off and ghosted over a trifling disagreement, she's more narcissistic than you. So you have dodged a bullet, my friend. You really have. So let's end with the reason you feel so bad and you grieve is that you went through some attachment and bonding, some imprinting with her. And remember, Conrad Lorenz says imprinting is forever. This lasting impression, the unforgettable date, the unforgettable person. And that's what hurts. But unfortunately, because of her higher narcissism than you, that is an illusion. It's an illusion. It's merely what psychologists call limerence on your part, which is the magic of falling in love, love at first sight. And it's not really love, it's attraction. You mentioned her beauty, by the way, right? It's her Aphrodite instinct. It's attraction. It's not love. It's not boyfriend, girlfriend. It's purely attraction. And part of limerence is there's a necessary lack of knowing the other, the details of the other. Because what happens is fantasy steps in and you then create a goddess, a perfect being in your fantasy mind when you are in limerence, when you fall in love. Now, that's not an accident or a deficit. It's a necessary, I believe, evolved behavior in all humans when they fall in love. It launches a potential more depth of knowing each other and eventually finding actual love, boyfriend, girlfriend love. Otherwise, humans would just sleep together and love would never occur. And I know a lot of authors promote that or like that or a lot of social media people propose that's somehow good. It's not good, nor is it natural, do I believe, for humans through our evolution. I think we are evolved to have it be a high bar to find one person for life in a commitment. It's a high bar, but I think we are evolved to pursue that. We may fail today. We're all failing because of the culture, the way the culture is. So why was I saying that? That's the source of your pain and your grief about this. And I think part of the salve or cure is to radically accept that what you are grieving is a fantasy in your head of perfection in a woman. You're grieving the loss of that, which if it were true, it'd be a catastrophic loss, but it is not true. You've suffered the loss of a somewhat narcissistic female who was beautiful that you fell in love with, and it would not have played out well for you with her. So let's end with this. I told you I had a surprise about Piccadilly Circus and your comments, and I understand some tourists to London and maybe perhaps many Londoners think that statue is the statue of Eros or Cupid. Cupid is the Roman, Eros is the Greek. I like the Greek, the god of love. If he shoots an arrow through you, you fall in love with whomever is in proximity. And the famous story where he marries Psyche, the most beautiful young female in the world, mortal. He trips over himself and falls on his own arrow, and he falls in love with Psyche. That's Cupid or Eros. That statue in Piccadilly is not Eros. It's his brother, Anteros. Anteros is the God of unrequited love, which is surprise, which is what we are talking about here. Anteros would fly around like Eros or Cupid around the universe, finding people who are kind, good, mature, gentle, and generous, and giving their heart to others, and then are rejected and not valued, maybe devalued, which narcissists do. And he would, I don't know what his punishment was, but he would punish the individuals who would not recognize the value of the love they are being offered. Anteros, the God of unrequited love, punishing those who are cruel to the empathic people out there, the lovers of the world. That's Anteros. So it's the opposite of what you think, but it's a very appropriate Greek god and statue for the situation you went through. Okay. I'm going to see if there were any comments. And maybe that's surprising to any Londoners out there that a non Londoner would know that about your statue in Piccadilly. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, listen, I hope that was helpful for your situation. If any of you enjoyed this, this is my first tryout at a solo live stream, and I'd be willing to keep doing this periodically, maybe once a week or so, if people send me questions on Substack about love and romance or psychology in general, masculinity. This is not medical treatment. This is not therapy. It's just hopefully interesting conversation. All right. Thank you guys for being here.